Welcome to the HR Business Blueprint. This week on our podcast, I have got Aaron Windrum with me. Aaron is the founder and director of A Human Resource Consultancy. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I mean, all the way from London as well.
I loved it.
And beautiful flowers brought for me as well.
Yes, of course.
Such a gentleman. Thank you.
Not at all.
It's lovely. Thank you for coming, Aaron. Aaron, tell the listeners about yourself. What's your background and what made you go into HR consultancy?
Okay, so a little bit about me. I started working whenever I was 13 in KFC. I was the youngest manager of a KFC in the world whenever I was 16. And then I done that for a few years. And then I decided I don't want to be doing that when I'm older. So I went back to college, got my A-levels. A computer chose HR based on my interests. And then I went to uni to study HR and then just started my career in HR after that. So worked my way up to HR director. And then after the pandemic, took a career break to go traveling. And I think it was during my time traveling, I think it was in Peru, that I really started to think about becoming a consultant, because I really enjoy going into organizations, helping with transformation and making things run smoothly. And then I know that's job done, sort of. And then I can move on to another organization and do that. So I sort of fell into consultancy. Then after that, I got offered an opportunity to help out a previous colleague. And yeah, from that, then it's grown. And one of the main things that I wanted to do with my consultancy is to help HR people. You know, I really feel that HR has totally transformed, even in my time, from what it was at the beginning, which is more personnel. It was just coming out of personnel to move into like a strategic force. So just the remit for HR is colossal now. And I just don't feel that HR departments, HR directors, chief people officers can handle everything alone, and they can't be an expert in all these different areas. So I think at the moment, the future is very bright for HR as a profession. I think the difference that we make in business is just incredible in organizations. And yeah, so I've seen an opportunity to come out and be a consultant and to offer that support to other HR and business leaders as well, just to help streamline their people operations and just to, you know, increase employee engagement and just make the business be better overall. I mean, more, you know, people, performance and profit ultimately. So yeah, so I think that's it.
Wow. So we obviously do HR consultancy, and I'll come on to how we met in a moment. And, you know, we can't be experts in everything. You know, when I went into consultancy, I'd worked at a very senior level within corporate for 24 years. I'd worked my way up. Like yourself, I started on my own, and then I built the business over 9 years. And a lot of people don't understand what HR even do. I mean, people still think back to the personal tea and tissue days, and, you know, fire and rehire is how a lot of people still refer to us. And the reality is, unless you work in HR, they don't know what strategic, generalist, or operational even means within HR. They don't realise there's different arms, there's reward and recognition. You know, you've got your specialisms in payroll, you've got your specialisms in employee relations, you've got your specialisms in so many different things. People don't realise that. And I know when I talk about my business, we do what I refer to as full service HR. We're full 360. And that doesn't mean we can do everything. But what I have done is built an organization where we specialize in something. So we specialize in particular, yes, we can do full service HR, anything and everything. But we particularly specialise in employee relations, your disciplinary, your grievance, your performance, the very complex dispute work. And then obviously 5 years ago, we went into the field of neurodiversity as well. So we specialise in those two particular areas that a lot of other HR companies come to us for. Yeah. And I know from when we talk about what you love doing, which is, if I recall, very much strategic, kind of that kind of HR director level stuff. I mean, I'm unusual. When someone reaches a HR director level, we kind of go, we don't do employee relations anymore. I'm not putting my hands on that. I've been there. I've done that. That's down doing that heavy work. I want to do the visionary things. And that's what you love. But I met you, Aaron, in Corfu earlier this year, and we just clicked straight away.
Yeah.
And I've built my business around knowing what we're good at, but there's some things we can do, but we're not experts in it. So that's where I'll bring in amazing associates that specialise in areas that we can deliver, but I'll bring a specialist in on it, because why wouldn't I want the best for my clients?
Totally.
And when I met you, I recognised you had some real niche specialisms that, in fact, I don't know any other HR person that does it. So tell us what they are.
Okay, so, well, I'm big into data protection. So when the GDPR came out, I'm one of the only people that absolutely loves the legislation. I think it does great stuff for us as individuals and for organizations also, in keeping people's data in check and understand why we collect it, what the purpose is for it. So that was one of the things. Then AI. I'm a big fan of AI, but ethical AI. So the big part of AI is that it needs to be implemented properly. You need to understand why you're implementing it in the first place. It's just not that it's the latest gadget to be playing around with. It's very, very serious stuff. It can have very, very big implications when it's put in place. So understanding the workflow of, like, from start to finish is key whenever it's AI, and what do you want to achieve from it? What tool is the best? So I help organizations by identifying where AI could really add value, and then identifying the best tool to add value in the different areas. So primarily in HR, but it also rolls out into the other areas of the business. So there's GDPR. I'm pretty well versed in data protection when it comes to HR, AI implementation. And then with other things as well, I'd done a role in global mobility before. But interestingly, on what you were saying earlier, it's really hard for me now because I'm keeping so up to date with the AI side of things. And then I love to keep myself up to date with employee relations and case law and stuff as well. But then I'm sort of feeling with global mobility that it's hard because you're spinning so many plates just to be. I'm no longer a total knowledge expert, I think, in global mobility. I've let that one slip a little bit. And one of the reasons maybe is because that it's becoming more difficult to do visas and stuff for people to bring people into the UK at the moment. So, but for Ireland, it has its own immigration law, as does the UK. And I used to be a bit of a whiz with both of those. I still know a lot about it, but I've sort of let that ball drop a little bit to focus more on the AI, because I believe I can do more to help organizations with that. So that sort of transformation piece, AI is the big one. Data protection, help out with complex ER cases. I can still, like yourself, I can sort of put my hand to anything. But interestingly, I don't like to say, I've reached HR director, and I don't like to get my hands dirty in a way anymore. I still like to dip in, and especially if it's a startup, I like to help them put the processes in place, because I think it's so rewarding whenever you show people a way to do things, and then they learn from it, and they're going to take it and show other people that as well. So I don't know how to explain it, but I get a really good feeling whenever I'm able to show people a really good way to do things or something they hadn't, and then they're able to show that to other people. So that's mainly what I do. It's more bigger projects as opposed to day-to-day work, but I do day-to-day as well, and can sort of help business leaders with sort of whatever it is they need.
I mean, I've heard your day-to-day. We have some great conversations. And like I say, we originally met in Corfu. There was a small group of us with Sarah on her Corfu retreat. It was the second time I've done it. I have rebooked for next year already.
Wow, you never told me that.
It seems to be a bit of an annual thing for me now. It's my space away from work to switch off and think about. And you know what? Every time I do Corfu with Sarah and Kim, the first year, it helped me turn my business around. And then this year, when I did it, I met yourself and some great other partners there. But obviously, we've become particularly close in working together. And I'm sure Sarah will be very proud of that. But also, it helped me make one of the best decisions I've ever done around recruiting my head of client relationships, which was Jamie. That just come out of nowhere. So every time I go to Corfu for the HR consultant retreat, something good happens. So
Totally.
I'm like, yeah, I've booked again for next year.
You're just right, because even from that as well, at the time I went to Corfu, I was still on the fence about consulting. Is this the path that I want to be going down? Is there enough appetite from HR leaders to get help in and get that support? And I feel that the tide is sort of changing a little bit with that, and more HR leaders are realizing that they can't do everything anymore and they can't be experts in all these areas. So they're starting to bring in consultants. And one of the other things, Nikki, was like whenever I was in construction, I noticed that we bring in so many like on-demand labor is the term, I think is the right term. And it's like whenever you bring a window cleaner in to clean your windows at home, or, you know, a gardener to cut the grass or things like that, it's on-demand labor. And I think that's where we're moving to when it comes to like HR. That you can bring in on-demand labor when you need it, as opposed to bringing in a full-time permanent resource that maybe isn't what you need. If you just need a new system put in place, or you need a backlog of ER cases dealt with, or something like that, where there's just other resources in this, where all sorts of consultancies can come in. It can just be that little bit of support. But back to what we were saying about Corfu, it's like I was still on the fence about whether this was the right path until I got to Corfu. Just spending time with all of you. And it was so interesting just hearing everybody's stories. And it just gave me that drive and passion that had sort of gone, because I was on the fence, but it was sort of on the other side of, I don't think I'm going to do this. And then it just pulled me back on track again, set me with a clear direction again, and to persevere with this road. So so something, I think, just whatever happened, Sarah has a way of magically making
bringing great people together,
and making us like even help each other, and just I don't know, she definitely has a secret sauce for that, doesn't she?
She does. She does. And we've since we met, we kind of now have you as one of our associates and specialists. So when we have a client or a project where it needs that specialist AI or GDPR knowledge, we come to you and get you to consult for us, same as we do with other consultants. So we get you we seek you out for that advice and project work. And then obviously the one thing as well, that as well as having those specialisms, you have a real knack for complex dispute resolution and complex HR matters as well. You're very much like me and Jenny and the rest of the team, where we're very no nonsense, and in the way that we approach this, of yes, we do it with care, and yes, we do it with empathy, but we're also very no nonsense as well. And you've got very similar trait in that as well. And I love talking complex dispute resolution and employee relations with you. We have some great conversations around that. People may have noticed you've got an Irish accent going on there, and I love an Irish accent. I could listen to an Irish accent all day. Are you comfortable sharing anything about your kind of life in Ireland growing up? What was that like?
Totally, yeah. So I'm from a little town called Hollywood. It would be pronounced as Holywood to most people, but over there it's pronounced Hollywood, like the same as in the USA. But I grew up a little town there. My family are mixed from both sides of the community over there, so it's unusual. It's not that unusual, I suppose, nowadays, but back then it was more unusual to have people from both sides of the community. So I think that played into allowing me, as I got older, to sort of understand other people's perspectives and sort of see both sides to the stories, or three sides to stories, and just to try and take a back step and then an overview. So yeah, I grew up there in Northern Ireland. The Troubles were still going on whenever I was growing up, but not to the extent of what they had been for the generation probably before me. Yeah, I don't know what else to cover about, but yeah, I grew up there, and growing up, I wanted to work from I was a kid. So I noticed that there was someone around my age was working in KFC, and then I went and asked and was able to get a job. It was a lady that used to take me in like an after school club that was actually the manager of the KFC. It had turned out over those years, and then she gave me the job and stuff. So that got me a really good exposure into the world of work. Yeah, I think that's it about growing up. I have one sister and I have a niece and nephew who I adore to pieces. So I think that's me in a nutshell.
And you now live in London.
Yeah.
And Ireland must be very different to living in London.
Totally. So I think I'd overgrown. Is that the right word? I think I outgrown my time in Belfast. So I went to uni in Liverpool, and I actually came up to Newcastle for the weekend prior to finishing uni. And there was a friend was moving to London. There was a group of them, around 10 people were moving to London from Newcastle because they'd studied in Newcastle. So I ended up, instead of getting off at Liverpool, I got the train on down to London, and we had a weekend in London. I think that was my first real time in London. And I was like, I really want to live here. I want to be in London. But then the way that life was, I just kept getting really good roles and opportunities in Ireland, and it just delayed things. And as I was getting older, I was like, no, it's now or never. I want over to England. I want to live in London. And yeah, I made the move. I got a role in a big construction company, and their head office was in London, and that's what got me over to London. And yeah, I love living in London. There's definitely a lot. It's very different from back home. There's the easy life. I think if you go back to Belfast, it's the easy life. You have a car and everything's just easier than maybe in London, but you don't have the social aspect. Things close in the evening at like, everybody comes home from work, and it's more maybe you go to the gym, or then you have your dinner, and it's just it's a different way of life. It's more quiet, but I'm more of a social person, and I like the city life. So for now, I'm very happy in London.
And it is a very different life in London. I lived in London for a number of years when I was going through my corporate career. I'm very much that. I enjoy going home, my TV, PJs on in front of the sofa and the TV. But when I lived in London working in my corporate days and head office for Tesco in those days, it was very, we all used to get the train into London, go out on Canary Wharf and all of those kinds of areas. So it is a very different lifestyle. Let's go back to what your specialisms are. So we've got AI, which is very much a specialism for you, and GDPR. What should HR consultants be making sure they know for their clients around those subjects?
One of the key things at the moment, which overlaps with both of these actually that I haven't touched upon, is the EU AI Act. So it doesn't apply to all organisations in the UK like the GDPR did, because we're out of the EU now. However, if a UK organisation has operations in Europe or offices, or they employ people remotely in Europe, they need to comply. If they're using AI tools, they need to comply with the principles of the EU AI Act. So it's pretty much like GDPR, but for AI. Now, in the UK, we don't have a standalone legislative document on the use of AI yet. It is very likely it will come in the future, but for now we don't have that. But what we do have is the ICO guidelines on proper AI implementation and how it impacts organizations with regards to GDPR, because a lot of the principles of GDPR overlap into AI implementation, and a lot of people may not be aware of that. But those guidelines they're very similar to the EU AI Act. It goes a little bit further, and it bans certain things. However, the ICO guideline, there's certain things banned as well through our existing legislation in the UK. But I think HR consultants need to get an overview of this, because what is certainly going to happen in the next couple of years is nearly every organization is going to start to utilize AI tools because of the benefits they can bring, whether it's just analyzing data or different things. AI is coming. It's not going anywhere. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. So first step is for HR consultants to get themselves up to speed on the processes on how to ensure that it's implemented properly. Obviously, big part to it is change management and following those principles, making sure you do it right. Doing that workflow that we spoke about earlier on, understanding what the impacts are going to be, rejigging job descriptions, having that communication with their people of what the future is going to look like or how they expect it to look like, and then working with their people. Open, transparent communication. Transparency is huge in the EU AI Act. It needs to be implemented into existing privacy notices, policies. You should have a standalone AI policy. But in other areas of the business where there's different policies, AI part needs to be incorporated. So I think people, consultants, HR consultants need to get up to speed with that. HR people in general, really, it wouldn't do you any harm to get up to speed with that and then be able to advise their clients, because whenever the clients come saying, I've got this problem, there probably will be an AI tool that can assist in that, where it's not going to cost as much as what it used to be. It used to be that if they came with a problem, they needed a very expensive software, and then they needed also people on top of it, and it just became a big project in itself. It may not require that anymore because of the tools that are available. So I think with those two specialisms that I'm working in, for people consultants, it's just getting up to speed with those things. The TUC have also proposed a bill around AI implementation, and it's very, very worker focused, people focused, and it brings out those principles that a lot of HR people went into the profession for in the first place, to have open, transparent communication, to ensure that people understand the purpose of their role. Then surely they should understand how that's going to change or evolve over time. So I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, there's a big focus. We can't be the experts in everything, which is obviously why we come to you on this subject. I think it's really important as HR consultants, we have so many plates to spin and keep on top of, because the reality is when we work with clients, they expect us to know anything and everything. They don't expect us to niche in something. That we need to be able to do everything from admin to HR director to payroll manager to health and safety manager to AI manager to GDPR controller and process and everything like that. There is so much we need to know and keep on top of, and we can't do it all. This is why we find specialists, to keep in charge of that. And I know, we're pretty switched on when it comes to GDPR in our business. We know, and we are seeing a big rise in subject access requests coming in from employees where we've dealt with employees' data or managed a particular situation. It seems to be getting used now as a bit of a phishing exercise to see what they can find against their employer. And I know we've had talk, we're fairly switched on in relation to this, because I know I got you to look through our templates recently to make sure we were watertight on making it very clear. We are a data processor, not a controller for our clients. Obviously, we control our own data, which is for obviously data protection for our business and business protection around our insurance and everything like that. But when it comes to the handling of employee data, we are the processor. And employees are quite taken aback when we respond to their requests, because they'll do one to their employer and they'll do one to us, thinking they're going to get something completely different. But the reality is that we have the same data. Any emails we've exchanged, that employer will have. Any documents have asked us to do, they will have, because we'll have sent it to them. So when we go back and go, actually, we're a processor, we will still review all the things, because sometimes we'll have a meeting or a telephone recorded that we've taken with the employee. We normally don't deal with employees unless we're asked to, but we may have a call. So we'll always double check our calls to see if we can see any recorded calls or any meetings that we've had with them which are recorded. And then we actually then pass that data to the employer, because we actually are not a controller, so we can't pass it. And it's up to that employer as to what they redact. But what an employee is entitled to, we will often get a client go to us, this is everything we've pulled together, can you have a look at it for us? And it can be anything from, a centimetre thick to inches thick, or great big piles of documents that they want us to review and redact. And the reality is, and I have this conversation with HR consultants all the time, an employee seems to think they're entitled to everything, and they are not. And we have to reiterate, when they go, can I have a copy of everything? It is okay to go back and go, can you please narrow it down?
Yeah.
And it's completely reasonable. And by exception, you can refuse to supply it if you feel that they're being completely unreasonable in the way that and what they're asking for. But then when it comes to data, they go, I want a copy of everything, including those people's conversations. And we have to go, no, you're actually only entitled to your personal data in relation to anything that we supply. Everything else, we retain the right to redact. And I remember years ago when we first got asked on a SAR request, I mean, they're so much more frequent now, but I remember...
That I'm just going to interject, that is because of the AI. So a lot of the AI tools, whenever people are using, say, ChatGPT for advice and stuff, it is suggesting and it's just becoming, and that's just, it's providing them with a lot of information on steps they should take. So that is as a result of the AI revolution that we're sort of going through, that it is, it's being caused by AI. In a way, just as and that, but carry on then.
No, you're right, and we will actually come back to AI because we're seeing how that's changing what we're doing as well. So with the GDPR, obviously, we often say to people, you're only entitled to your personal data. Yeah. You're not entitled to other people's. You're not entitled to company information. A judge can request some of this if it's relevant to a case, when it comes to evidence, and they absolutely will make us unredact everything. But when it goes to an employee, they don't always realise we retain the right to redact. We retain the right to withhold anything that isn't their personal data because they're only entitled to their personal data. Is there anything else HR consultants need to know when it comes to GDPR and around what employees are and aren't able to access?
Yeah, it's the clarity around that. Some of that can be dealt with through the privacy notice as a start, right? So sometimes the way it's going now that most people are finding out about data subject access requests, so from a HR perspective, maybe it's time that we internally made the process easier. So we were more prepared for these because they are only going to increase these requests. And you could potentially have a section in your privacy notice or your data protection policy, if you have one, stating how more information on data subject access requests, because what the legislation says is that any living data subject can obtain copies of their own data, which we've covered here, but that is their own data. But what the other part, the ICO have added bits and pieces onto this over the years as well, to clarify and to actually offer support for employers that are stuck when it comes to what employees have a right to see and what they don't. Our data subjects, we should say, because they could be workers or clients or anything. But so they're allowed to access anything that relates personally to them. So anything that could be to do with, that is to do with them, whether it states their name or their job title or something that links it to that living individual. But as you said, anything else, you do have a total right to redact it. You don't have to explain that to the individual. They would just receive the documents, and then if they queried it, then you would just explain, look, you're only entitled to, under the legislation, you're only entitled to see what belongs to you. But definitely when it comes to everything, that's something that I think potentially AI tools may be saying, ask your employer for a copy of all records that they hold on you. And that's too vast a request. It needs to break it down. And sometimes you can get a data subject access request that could be, 2 pages long potentially stating, but it should be specific. And what an employer always has, or a data controller always has, is the right to go back and ask clarification questions. And whenever that happens, that actually stops the clock. So it stops the clock within that 30 days. So someone makes a data subject access request. If you go back with a clarification, it stops the clock until they respond to you. And then whenever they respond, the clock starts again. And also there's another option if the data that's being asked for is really, really excessive in how long it's going to take you to obtain it, to redact it, etc. There is an option there to delay the response, but you need to have a viable reason and a valid reason as to why you're doing that. A justifiable reason, I think, would be the better way to put it. But I think that anything else that HR business leaders with the SAR should know, just that they can ask for clarification questions. There is options there to extend the time in which responses are, if needs be, only if needs be. And that, if an employee's request is totally irrelevant, they're asking for data on something to do with a total individual, they don't have a right to do it as well. No. So I think that's it. And just as we're seeing, these data subject access requests are just going to become more and more common. So potentially thinking ahead of processes, how we can make this easier, communication. Maybe we do a 1-pager saying how you make a data subject access request, and there might be a big influx if we publicize that. I think that's why nobody's done it, but you can maybe slip it into a policy somewhere so that if someone does need it, then and if they're asking an internal chatbot about it, that it guides them
Yeah. And GDPR is an interesting one because, I mean, we've dealt with it for years and thought we know it inside out. But even every now and again, me and Jenny will be on the phone going, isn't it? Would that apply? I mean, there was really an interesting one we come across years ago where someone had over 10 years service and they wanted everything. And I remember at the time we made an inquiry to a GDPR expert. It was a little organisation when they were going through all the big GDPR companies and everything. And they actually said to us, because we kind of went, our clients come across thousands of emails because their email, which effectively is an identifier, is in the to box or the CC box. Yeah. But actually the content of that email is not relevant to their personal data. They just happen to have their email address in the to and CC. And I remember them saying to us, actually, you're not required to give that whole email. You can just say, we've got X amount of emails where you're in the body of the to or the CC, but nothing else is relevant to your personal data, and just say to them they've got X amount. And that was interesting because I know that was causing a lot of pain for consultants that didn't know at the time on how to kind of handle that amount of data. So yeah, so I guess what we're saying with GDPR then is make sure your terms and conditions are right and that it's very, very clear. For clarity purposes, that you are a processor and not a controller. Make sure you've got some template emails and letters to respond to employees, and obviously be able to support. I know one of the biggest tips I would ever give when it comes to GDPR, because our clients do ask us to review documents before they send them out to employees to make sure there's nothing sensitive in there that could identify somebody else, just because you kind of reach a point where you go word blind. We use Adobe. We pay for the Adobe. I think it's about £15-20 a month, but it enables us to redact documents so much easier.
Because even the emails you were talking about there, you have to be sure that the body of those emails doesn't contain stuff that relates to them. So it's just ensuring that it's fine if you're in CC, but if it's something that relates to your role or something as well. And then when it comes to the controller processor, it's making sure that your role is as a processor and not as a controller, because some organizations say it was a marketing organization and they gathered data and then they turned it into something else. So they started to do profiles and then they started to create their own individual records and create a profile potentially on individuals. Then they would be a controller of the data because they're changing. It's not just that they're processing the data, they're controlling the data because they're creating new data on these individuals as well. So it's just, there is so much nuance with it just to make sure. But normally what you're saying is 100% right as well, that as long as they've just been CC'd into group emails that have been going out to the whole team, then that's fine to say there's 2,000 emails during that duration. But even so that's a good example. Let's say a 10-year period with that amount of data would definitely probably warrant, depending on the size of the team and the organization, it would warrant clarification at least, and probably most likely extension of the time frame in order to respond.
Yeah. And I think the reality is with that, I think years ago when GDPR first come out, and we all register with the ICO as consultants. So if you're not registered as a HR consultant, you need to be, because you are handling data. There was a lot of fear over, I'm going to get reported, I'm going to get fined if I don't do this, I don't do that. Look, the reality is life happens. I think there's a misconception as to actually how much power and how much the ICO do get involved when you think of the size of the organisation versus how many people form them to query. And it is about having good processes. I mean, as well as handling our employee, the employee data and responding to these SAR requests, the other considerations that a HR consultant should have, and I talk to quite a few of my clients about this, is you should have a register, a breach register. So if you accidentally send an email to somebody that's got somebody else's data in there by accident, you should be logging and investigating and deciding whether it's reportable to ICO. I quite often speak to clients and they don't have these things in place. And, one of the questions we asked you in our audit is, are you ICO registered? Because they're handling client data and things like that. So there is a few fundamentals of make sure you're registered with the ICO, make sure you have a breach log. So if you accidentally send something to, sometimes I've seen it where a whole bunch of emails have been put into CC instead of BCC. And then you've just shared all of these client emails with somebody else, and I think we had an error years ago by one of our clients where one of their receptionists had accidentally sent everything out in CC, and they had one complaint that was really kicking off, and that's when I then realised clients were not as prepared for GDPR very early in my business, and this is where we then had made sure that we always asked the question about, is ICO, do you have a privacy policy in place for the data and on your website, and then we kind of then the breach log. Do you have the breach log, and do you investigate log similar to health and safety when near incident, near misses, similar kind of thing. What's happened? Is it reportable? What did you investigate? What have you put in place to prevent it or try and prevent it in the future? Because human error happens. You're never going to get away from it completely. So that's kind of GDPR from a HR consultant point of view.
The other thing is record of processing. So having that, knowing which data you collect, why you collect it, how you process it, what systems it's on, where all it could be stored, where it is stored, so that, if a couple of other things actually we'll speak about that you mentioned, but yes, the ICO is obviously our regulatory body. They have a huge amount of work, casework and stuff, and they encourage everybody to resolve things between the parties themselves before they really get involved. It has to be something substantial or, consistent where there's been a total breakdown in communication before they step in. But one of the things whenever they do come in to do an investigation is I want to see your record of processing, even just from the outset, to see what data you collect, how you process it, what security measures you have in place, just so that you are fully aware of what's going on with that data, because you do have a duty. You're collecting personal, sometimes highly, highly confidential, sensitive information.
We hold health records and occupational health reports and all sorts.
All that stuff. And it's just making sure that that's covered. And, even when I've been doing them, like I've before I came out as a consultant, I had implemented GDPR. It just happened across 3 different organizations that I was working for, and then multiple outside friends and families, businesses and stuff. But whenever you're doing the record of processing, one of the things is that you it's only through those conversations you forget, and you're like, oh, but we collect that. Why do we collect it? And sometimes we were realizing that we were collecting stuff that we didn't need, and also at different parts of the process, Nikki, at the beginning, you can ask someone for their national insurance number. And at that time it was deemed not as needed at the beginning part of the process, but now there's different things that are happening which could maybe warrant that you would need that at an earlier stage and stuff. So it's something that's always evolving. It's not like once it's done. Once you bring in a different system, your record of processing needs to be updated if you're putting names, any sort of personal information in it. So it's the GDPR isn't done, dusted in a box. It's still evolving, and now with the AI tools as well, it needs to all be looked at again and be a constant thing. But I think reassurance for HR consultants, business owners, business leaders, that look, these requests are going to keep coming in, but you don't have to provide absolutely everything. But actually, on the other hand, they need to be aware that anything that they say that employee does have a right to see. So if that's a WhatsApp conversation and I say something to you about an employee and they're named in it, and I'm saying something about what's going on with they will have a right to see that WhatsApp conversation. And Microsoft Teams, whatever platforms you're using, emails is only the start of it. Any sort of communication back and forward, if it relates to that individual, the individual should have a right and does have a right to see anything that's related to them in that respect, provided they specify that they want communication to do with a redundancy, all communication between Aaron and Nikki over WhatsApp, Teams, email, and that does happen. So it's just to have that awareness before you start to say anything or say something that you may later regret. I think potentially regret. It's just to have a think and just be aware of what you're saying and what you're communicating. I
mean, let's be honest, in HR, we quite often say to clients, please don't put anything in writing or text. If just remember that could end up in front of the eyes of an employee or a judge. Just think twice. And so I guess coming out of that, what a HR consultant should be doing is making a list of everything they use and making sure it's all covered in their privacy policy. And these are things where they're doing their searches when GDPR requests come in and SAR requests. And I know one of the challenges, and I've seen this question come up quite a few times in HR consultant groups, which is, can I charge my client for this? Well, unless the client has specifically asked you to review a load of documents, the answer is no. This should be considered in your pricing model, because if you get a SAR request from an employee, you can't make their employer, if that employee has come to you for a single piece of work under pay-as-you-go, you then can't charge the client because that employee's chosen to put a SAR request in. So when you are building your business and pricing your model, you absolutely should be considering everything that affects your hourly rate. It's not just about, and I see this mistake quite common with a lot of consultants, that when they're looking at their pricing model, they think, oh, well, I used to be on 25 quid an hour, so I'm going to charge 50 quid an hour. And I'm like, well, no, because you've got business costs, you've got systems, you've got your insurance, you've got your travel that you may not charge for,
pension,
you've got no pension, no healthcare, you've got all of the training, you've got to go through all the webinars, and that time lost you've got to sit on making sure your employment law knowledge is kept up to date. All of these are the systems that you pay for, any advice or legal documents you have to have made, anything that might come in that you can't charge a client for, like action in a SAR request or attending an employment tribunal. If you're called as a witness, you can't charge that client that you did some work for once for that, unless you've got an agreement that says you can. And the reality is you probably haven't. There might be one or two that do, but I've never come across it. This is why getting your pricing model is so important, because we have to do all of this stuff. And it's the stuff that clients don't see. So when you say when a client goes to us, yeah, but I can get this cheaper, someone else is going to charge me 20 quid an hour cheaper than you're going to achieve, I'll go, well, you can't compare, because you're only seeing what you can see. You don't see the stuff in the background that consultancy might be doing for you. So for example, we do offer a lot of things for our clients that a lot of standalone HR consultants can't offer. They don't do masterclass training, they don't have a hub platform that they pay for, they don't have any learning that they pay for, they don't have all of these other things that we might have in place for our clients. So you can never really, I know there's a pricing model out there, but you have to consider when you're going into consultancy all these things that we don't think about.
So it's apples and oranges, pears, all sorts of fruit whenever you're comparing. And like it is now, you could go out into the street and we could buy, a battery for the Christmas lights, and it could last a day. You can get different ones, and there's different things. So, there's always probably 9 times out of 10 going to be a cheaper option out there. But one of the phrases is you get what you pay for. Yeah. If you pay a fee that's more likely to be what you think it should be, or what you could maybe deem to be a bit expensive, whenever you take the cost of an employee. I think a lot of organizations that we provide services for, if we were there as an employee, that our fees are the flat fee. There's no employer's national insurance, pension contributions, any of the insurances that you may provide to your employees across, and those additional costs. It's a flat fee. You know what you're going to pay, give or take a little bit if there's a time variance or something, and we're charging by time. But I think that definitely to look into the consultant to make sure that what they're offering is what the services that you're seeking. Another thing then, which you had mentioned there, was for consultants as well to provide, because obviously everybody, it's an inconvenience for maybe most people to have to respond to a subject access request. So you need to build that into your time as well. Hopefully people won't have too many of them. Most HR consultants act as a data processor rather than a data controller. They may create little bits like phone call transcripts and things, but then they just provide that to the data controller. If there's a SAR has come in from an individual, they just provide all that to them and say, look, we're a processor, not a controller. But I think that the pricing model needs to be right. You need to incorporate, for especially new consultants coming out there, you need to realize that your holidays as well is another thing. You take a week off work, you ain't making any money, and you need to cover for your 5.6, probably 6.5 weeks annual leave that you used to get in your corporate job, all of your insurances and things. So and the overheads of your business.
Yeah, these are all the things that a lot of people don't think about. AI.
Yeah.
So I am a big advocate for AI. I've been using it a few years now. I've seen it grow over the years. I've seen it go from a learning model to you can now have a non-learning model, which means your data is more protected. We've gone from where we've had to redact a lot of stuff to it's now protected with our own platform. And, that is something that we certainly use. We have a non-learning module when we use it so that none of that data is used for learning or ever goes out into the big wild world of the internet. That doesn't go out. We're seeing the use of AI massively increase. I mean, we use it. I recommend it massively in the world of neurodiversity. It really helps people who are dyslexic and struggle. I use it quite a lot on. I sometimes will need to reduce my War and Peace social media, on my emails, on my documents. I need to simplify things, or I need to get something concise and the grammar right and the flow right. So I will literally drop everything into. I will just what I refer to as brain dump everything I want to say and ask it to formulate it for me. And God knows what we did before the days. It was like anything. What did we do before the world of straighteners? What did we do, before the world of microwaves and all these different things? We always come across this technology. AI is not a new thing. It's evolving. It's here to stay. It absolutely is. Is it going to replace all jobs? No, I think it will replace some over time, but it cannot replace everyone because it's only as good as the data that goes in, and humans have to input that as well. But AI is here to stay. And I am seeing it massively impact HR and HR consultants now in relation to where we may have historically got a 2-page grievance. We're now getting 20-page grievances because they're getting AI to do the work for them. And I mean, I can look at a document and spot AI a mile off. I mean, I've even got something where I can drop a document into it and it'll tell me what's human and what's AI, or it'll give me an indicator, but even that's not foolproof. But it'll give me an idea. But I can normally spot AI straight away when people don't realise that the bigger dashes, or it puts a Z in instead of an S, and you've got to be really clear so it learns your tone of voice and the way you word things and everything like that. So I've spent years teaching my system to do something, and my tone of voice, my language and my humour and everything. But when we get a grievance come in, I can spot a mile off an AI grievance, and they are on the rise.
But and this is happening across the board. It's happening in ET1s where people are bringing their cases as well. All sorts of employment issues. Yes, of course, people are going to the tools. And one of the things, Nikki, as well, is so obviously it's providing a lot more context. It's listening to a brain dump from an individual, and then it's putting it into a document that on the surface looks really, really good. However, for experts and people like us, whenever we start to dig deeper, we're like, this doesn't even make sense. It's covering the same points, a lot of repetition, and it's quite difficult to pull out what the main parts of the grievance are. However, this is something we are definitely going to have to get used to. It isn't going anywhere either. And it should improve over time on the accuracy and stuff, because at the moment, I think sometimes legislation is getting mixed up and things like this here. But look, that's going to be on the increase, and it's just by understanding that. But some of the things for us as HR practitioners are to have AI tools as well that can analyze that AI grievance and come out with what the points are. What are the actual points here that need to be addressed?
Can it clarify the points? I mean, we still have to
cross-check. But we can do that from, cross-check it afterwards, but we can use an AI tool. Even if you say the person's used ChatGPT in-house, if you've only got Copilot as your tool in the corporate space, you could use Copilot to analyze this grievance, provided it's all locked down and it's set up properly. But that's a way to assist. But it's happening with employment tribunals. Judges are getting frustrated. In fact, in Ireland, the equivalent of the tribunals offices in Ireland, the WRC, Workplace Relations Commission, they're actually the equivalent of ACAS. But they do the equivalent of tribunals in Ireland, and they've got guidance actually out now, which is quite helpful for those who are taking a case against their employer on the use of AI. It's quite detailed on how AI can be used to assist, but how also it shouldn't be used to assist. So they've actually released guidance. So we could maybe see ACAS coming out with something similar in the near future, because they all tend to sort of watch what the other one's doing, but they've definitely seen an increase in it. One of the main things for employers just on that training the system model is that the AI policy is crucial here. Some organizations, even as far as last week, I had someone contact me and said, our organization doesn't allow any AI use. It was actually a consultant who had a client and they didn't allow any AI use, and they were like, should they still have a policy? And I was like, absolutely, because it's this dark use of AI where, you can just say, oh, you're not allowed to do that. But that's not going to stop people. If people are using these tools in their home life and it's helping them, it's making them be more productive, more efficient. If they're using those, then they're using it under the table. They're going to use it on their own personal devices. So you need to be quite clear on a policy, and then you need to cover for all sorts of eventualities, including if someone does dark use, even though they're not permitted. Number one, if you don't have a policy making it clear that you don't permit the use of AI tools and sensitive, confidential information should not be uploaded into the tool, but also to have the memory function switched off. Try and circumvent as many things as you can by this policy, by having the policy to cover as many potential issues that could arise. A blanket ban, fine, if that's your decision on it for now. But I make sure your policy also provides more education for people, even if it's just to benefit them in their own personal use of AI tools as well. But I think that we're definitely going to see AI just becoming more and more involved in everything we do, and in all sorts of emails to employers, requests for salary increases. You might read the email and go, I don't know how this person thinks that they have achieved all that in that year. The manager just might go, is this a different person we're talking about? But, and because the AI is going to write and make them out to be the most amazing employee. And the other thing to mention, I think, is that AI is always your friend. I've had
people pleaser.
I've had numerous arguments with AI, quite heated arguments, and it's just caved every time and said, yeah, sorry, you were right. When are you going to tell me I'm wrong? Because at times nobody's right all the time. And I wanted to challenge me, and it's just not doing that. It's people pleasing.
Yeah. So I remember having this conversation with someone about how it people pleases, and also obviously it hallucinates. So again, where judges are getting frustrated, individuals are using it and it's causing frustrations for HR consultants and employment solicitors, where people are using AI. It's then telling you about some case law, and because it's coming from someone that doesn't know case law and they don't do employment law, and it's maybe an employee putting a grievance or trying to pull together some evidence for a case, they're quoting cases that don't even exist because it hallucinates and makes cases up. Now, we will know that. We'll know to research cases. We can look on the tribunal site to look them up and research them, but employees wouldn't know that. So I know it's causing frustrations. I was talking to a solicitor that we work really closely with recently, and they were saying it's causing real frustrations on them trying to agree settlements with employees, because what an employee is doing is they're pulling together cases on AI, then feeding it into AI and asking it to look at what judgment and awards on average are being awarded for these things. And they're then using that as a guideline to go, well, AI is telling me it's worth this. So when they're then in negotiation with an employer or a solicitor, it's nigh on impossible sometimes to come to an agreement on the value of a case, because AI has convinced them that the case is worth so much more.
Absolutely. So I actually had one of my clients that they had a situation like this where the employee had received totally inaccurate information from the AI tool to tell them their case was going to be worth a lot more than they could ever have expected in a tribunal. There was no talking this individual down. They only wanted to communicate via email. They would not have a meeting. So there was no face-to-face. And even I think if we did have a face-to-face where I had even become involved, I think that person had been given such inaccurate information from AI that it wouldn't have mattered what I said. They would have just seen all of us, including the lawyer, as being on the employer's side. So what the advice I gave in that instance was to, the fee that we cover for a settlement is for the employer to we actually wrote an email saying, look, we believe you have inaccurate information from whatever sources. What we're willing to do is for you to choose a solicitor of your choice and go and get verification on the likelihood and success of your case and what you can hope to achieve. And whenever then they done that it was actually a grievance. It wasn't actually at a settlement or anything. It was just a grievance where they were thinking they were going to go to tribunal and get all that money. So it actually got rid of the grievance because the advice from AI was so wrong that then whenever the only way around it, Nikki, was to give them that to cover the fee. It was an exception, but to cover legal advice and to send of their choosing.
Because they weren't moving.
Because they weren't moving, and there was no other way. But that's another thing that I think that us as HR professionals are going to see, and it's a little trick up our sleeves, because it's totally fair and totally reasonable to, if we're going to use that money later down the line at a settlement or to cover legal fees for tribunal cases that have been made up to be something crazy, that it's better to pay for it up front and nip it in the bud, as to speak, so to speak. So. Yeah.
But we're going to see a rise in that. So the world of HR is changing. We can use the tool for many things. We use it for many things. It could be a letter. We would never use it for a template policy, because the reality is I try not to roll my eyes when we speak to a new client and said, oh yeah, AI wrote me a policy. I'm like, oh God, okay. Yeah. They don't realize how far. So we kind of quickly get them onto ours. But the world of just generally, due to AI, of work is going to change over the years. What do you think the biggest fundamental changes over the next 2 to 5 years are going to be?
Okay, so I think what we're going to see are teams reducing in size, and that doesn't mean redundancy. It means that roles are going to change, and I think that if someone maybe leaves a team, that there's just going to be other ways that it's looked at as to how the work can be replaced. Can other people take it on? Can AI tools fill in some of the gaps, right? I think that's going to happen. I think we're also going to see new roles created. The World Economic Forum has given estimates that by 2030, I think it's going to be something like 60. I can't even remember the figures now, but it's like maybe 80 million jobs are going to be lost, but 170 million are created. So it's like an increase of like around 70 million roles.
Right.
But that's not going to happen at the same time.
No.
We're probably going to see roles lose or being lost whilst people develop the skills, and these new roles are created. One of them is like ethical AI officer now, is somebody in a large organization that makes sure that, all the ethics are covered. So look, I see that happening. I see new roles being created. I feel that HR people have a massive role to play in this, in upskilling their existing workforce in AI, and that's across the board. Everybody can benefit from knowing how to use new tools. That's standard. Teaching everybody how to use something will benefit them. This tool can benefit people, as part of wider society. Also, if you train everybody and somebody's potentially going to retire in a few years, and you train them how to use AI tools, they can go away, and once they retire, they can show, people in their communities, in their friendship groups, their partners, how to use these AI tools and how to improve their knowledge of it. So look, I think we're going to see roles totally change. I think HR need to be right at the front and center of this, of preparing roles, preparing their people, upskilling, training, and doing their workforce planning. Because the workforce planning across the next 2 years is going to then evolve again in the next 2 years. So what we used to have was a 5-year plan, which is lovely, 2020, 6 to 2030 plan. It's going to have to be more regular than that. You're going to have, because it's going to evolve. The AI tools are just evolving daily at colossal levels, and they can really benefit you, but they just need to be implemented properly. So I think we're going to see a total change in the workforce, how it's made up. But like the analogy I always use is, whenever the tractor rolled in and all our relatives, our ancestors were picking the crops, and they watched the tractor pull in, do an amazing job, and everybody sort of went, uh-oh. We're seeing that as well. The first time we used AI, all of us sort of went, wow. But farms still need people.
Yeah.
We all just do better roles now. It's like our skills evolve, and we're not doing the stuff that nobody liked, picking the crops out of the ground. Everybody hated it. Maybe you got the odd person enjoyed it, but I think the majority of people disliked working out in the cold, picking the potatoes, carrots, whatever, vegetables. And now they don't have to do that, because it's done. They're in a nice warm tractor to a certain extent, but they're sheltered. And the machinery and the tools are doing the work. So I think that's what we're going to see with AI. It's going to remove a lot of the admin, and free us up to do better stuff, and even to have more conversations with each other. And come up with solutions and stuff rather than being bogged down with admin. And it could also help with the burnout, which we're seeing with people. And I also really see the 4-day week being something that organizations move towards. Like, there's nobody I know that wants to work 5 days a week anymore.
No.
So it's like the 4-day week it's the next thing that's coming. And it's organizations that get ahead of that. And that's something I'm going to be looking at niching in as well next year, is the 4-day week, is implementing 4-day weeks for organizations. Because if you get ahead of that, you're going to attract the best talent, the cream of the crop from the market to come and work for you.
No, absolutely. And the world is changing. AI, the reality is AI is going to change as consultants. So I guess taken away from that is, from an AI point of view, it's a great tool that we can use, but use it right and make sure your data is protected with a non-learning platform. And it's just an upgrade to ChatGPT, the one that we use. It's the business protected non-learning version. It will say at the bottom, this is a non-learning version. Make sure you've got AI policies. I know we're currently in the process of building ours, ready to work with our clients next year and getting those rolled out for our clients next year as well. Or actually, we're currently working on them, and they'll be rolled out in 2026. So we'll be rolling them out along with a lot of updates for our clients, including stress policies due to the health and safety, AI, neurodiversity. There's lots of new policies and everything coming. So, that's a tip, start getting your policies ready. So what's next for you? What's exciting? What's coming up for Aaron?
Oh, so we have got next year is I'm working with a fantastic lady who is a play instigator over stateside. So we're actually collaborating to deliver corporate workshops, and that's one of our big offerings next year. So we take the Japanese principle of wabi-sabi, which is about imperfection and the value of imperfection. So the pottery that has the cracks up it with the gold and stuff in the middle of it. So it just shows the beauty of imperfection. Some of the things like our antibiotics and stuff, penicillin was all discovered as an accident. Nothing was perfect. It had been left out overnight and, for a period of time, I think. And it was the antibiotics then that we seen with the penicillin. So look, wabi-sabi is basically that life isn't perfect. It's never going to be perfect. And it's actually the art of imperfection that allows us to have some of the greatest breakthroughs in organizations and just in our lives in general. But it's going to focus on company and organizations and teams. I'm bringing in about AI and the use of AI, future ready workforce, and also we need to make it fun. So there's going to be a big part on play and the science of play behind it as well. So this lady is the expert in that area, and she's going to be coming to the UK in April, May, potentially June next year to run these workshops. UK and Ireland, we're going to run these workshops. So corporate workshops, really exciting. Can't wait to get started on those. Then next year is going to be more AI implementation, keeping up to date, be delivering some more webinars and things. EU pay transparency is also coming in, and that's just about salary leveling. It's a big piece of legislation started in New York 8 years ago, but basically about companies being transparent with how they pay people. You don't have to publish everybody's salary on the website. Some companies do that, but that, it's just about having salary band, more like what the public sector does.
Salary bandings, so like with benchmark.
And it also helps with the gender pay gap and all that stuff. So that legislation is coming out in the EU in the summer of next year as well. So
lots of exciting things for you next year, and obviously working with us is always exciting. Us working together. Aaron, thank you for coming on today. If people want to reach out to you, what is the best way for people to reach out or contact you? Okay, they can just check out my website, www.ahruki.com. So that stands for A Human Resource UK Ireland.com. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Likewise. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the HR Business Blueprint podcast. For any information on what we've covered in this episode, head over to the show notes. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Thanks for listening.